This is The Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral.com.
Good afternoon, Tuscaloosa, Internet World, West Alabama. How are you doing today? It is Friday, March 22nd. This is the Joe Gaither Show right here on BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com. You're watching us on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube at Joe Gaither 6. You're listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on Amazon at The Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral. We appreciate everybody who's tuned in to us. We're a proud part of the BamaCentral Broadcasting Network, along with our friends Blue Collar Unplugged, Blake Byler, Matthew Gibson, and Jacob Pickle, bringing you all things Alabama basketball related. And we will hit on a bunch of Alabama basketball topics today. It's been a couple days. I want to apologize to everybody who's been looking for the show. I missed you on Wednesday and just got overwhelmed with a bunch of stuff on Thursday. So here we are on a Friday, and we have a ton of things to talk about. We want to invite you to jump into the comments section on any of those three platforms that we've just mentioned, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Joe Gaither 6. If you hear something that you want to jump in and make a comment on, or you can bring up whatever else you want to talk about. We're going to talk about Kadyn Proctor because we haven't talked about it yet on the show. We're going to talk about Pro Day. We're going to talk about two new Alabama football recruits. We're going to talk about Alabama football practice yesterday. We're going to talk about the SEC's performance yesterday in the tournament, round number 1, disappointing 1-3 performance, and we will finish with Alabama's matchup against Charleston tonight, 6:35 on True TV. Can the Crimson Tide get out of round 1 and play on Sunday? So that's going to be the order and the itinerary for the day today, and let's just see how well we get into some of these topics. Again, you can join us on the comment section at Joe Gaither 6 if you want to make a comment about any of these topics. We're starting with our friend Kadyn Proctor. Okay, so we had our show on Tuesday, and then what was that? Tuesday night? Yeah, so Tuesday night, Kadyn Proctor hits on the transfer portal, hits on the Twitter machine. I'm leaving. It basically pops. It blows up. That Kadyn Proctor is leaving Iowa and he's transferring back to Alabama. And okay. What do you feel? What do you think? How do you digest this? First off, you obviously on the football field, from a football perspective, you take a 5-star talented tackle back on your football team any day of the week. They don't grow on trees. He was a top 1 or top 3 recruit at his position. He's a freshman All-American. Okay, so he's a good player. He improved throughout the season. I know there were several points. Golly, that Arkansas game, he got beat like a rented mule. But there were several games that he struggled in, but he grew through the year. If you didn't realize it, he was playing in the Rose Bowl with a foot injury, some ligament issue in his ankle or in his foot. So he was improving through the year, and he's just a freshman. So you obviously want that guy on your football team. Okay, great. So from an Alabama perspective, it's a win on the football field, but is it really a win? What do you make of the locker room dynamic? How do the guys okay, so you've got to assume that he was in contact, or he's still been in contact with several guys that are in the program, and they're saying, hey man, the last couple of weeks have been like this. And the last couple of weeks, we did fourth quarter. We did this, we did that. We're starting spring practice, and dude, we're playing music at spring practice. You got to hear this new offensive line coach, Chris Kapilovich. He's been whatever the case may be, that he's been having discussions with the Alabama players that are still in the program, that have experienced the first 6, have experienced the first 8 to 12 weeks of Kalen DeBoer. And so here we are. He decides, okay, I don't like it here at Iowa, or I'm not as homesick as I thought I was, or I've gotten my fill of home. Look, that was one of his big issues last year. I think he was very homesick. The young man is from Des Moines. I think he's very close with his mother, and you respect that. You love that. And I think that he had a pretty serious girlfriend up in Iowa. And I have no idea if that's continued or not, but I think that he was homesick in that nature. So, okay, you heard whispers about that. He transfers to Iowa. They kept in contact with me. He basically admits to the tampering violation, and he doesn't play a single snap up there. And now he's back in Tuscaloosa. What do you make in the offensive line room? Are they still like, is it still, hey, welcome back to your buddy? You didn't miss anything. I guess, well, I mean, we did fourth quarter without you. We'll see what you get. Like, okay, so first and foremost, he cannot come back until the spring window. The spring window opens after 8A. So the offensive line, everybody who's in the offensive line room is going to go through the entirety of spring practice and participate in 8A without him. He's going to be able to enroll, hop into the transfer portal right after the spring window, and he can re-enroll for summer one and, get right back on track, I guess, with his academics. It's just an odd situation. Look, from a football standpoint, it's bad for college football. It is bad for college football to have the transfer portal open this liberally, this freely. Look, I do support for the player movement, and I do support player freedom. Okay, I'm homesick. I want to go home. I'm going to Iowa, going back to Iowa. That's fine. I get that, and no, hate on that at all. And then just to experience, okay, maybe this wasn't the right decision. Well, there's got to be some sort of penalty. The player movement, it cannot be so free that you're hearing lots of complaints of, he took a lot of money from the Iowa NIL deal, which apparently he did not. Apparently, he's only gotten money from sponsorship agreements that he already did while he was at Iowa. Just a couple of appearances or whatnot. And so, like, okay, he got money, and you got so many layers to this that complicate things. The player movement. Kadyn Proctor's up there for 8 weeks or so. I saw, who was it? One of the popular Alabama Twitter accounts saying that it was just a long extended visit. It was a long official visit, a long visit home that he's going to have. And so he's going to come back to Tuscaloosa, and we got to see practice yesterday, and we'll talk a lot more about it here in a little bit, but we got to see practice yesterday. We saw the first team offensive line, and I wondered to myself, how's he going to fit back into this group? We saw Elijah Pritchett, Tyler Booker, Parker Brailsford, Jaden Roberts, and Miles McVay, all the way from left to right. And so you see these guys, and you know that Proctor played left tackle last year. How do you look Elijah Pritchett in the eyes and say, hey man, Kadyn Proctor's coming back, and he's going to be the first string left tackle, and you're going back to second string? You guys competed all year long last year. I know you flirted with the transfer portal for about 24 hours, not 8 weeks, not going to a school, enrolling, and then coming back. But now that Kadyn Proctor's back, you're back to second string. How do you look him in the eyes? And now, granted, probably the talent is probably the Kadyn Proctor's a little more talented than Elijah Pritchett. I don't think Elijah Pritchett's a bad player, but I think that Kadyn Proctor has the physical tools to be a better player. Or do you just say, Elijah Pritchett, you're just going to have to flip to right tackle, and you're going to take place, Miles McVay, you're probably the odd man out there as the most inexperienced player of the group, probably going to be a good player in the future. But what do you say? Or do you say, Kadyn Proctor, hey, man, if you want to play, you're going to have to probably flip to right tackle. I know you were left last year, and that's where all the value is in the NFL, going to the left tackle. What do you do inside the locker room? Do you just say you're the third? I mean, look, you go through the tackles, and Coach Kalen DeBoer was asked about the tackles yesterday, and he was pretty generically complimentary of everybody. You have Elijah Pritchett, you have Miles McVay, you've got our guy Wilkin Formby, Mr. Taco Casa in there. Like, you've got a handful of tackles. What is Kadyn Proctor, how's he going to fit right in? How's he going to come back to the room and fit right in? Now, I am excited about it just from an Alabama perspective. I think that is very interesting, but it's a bad move for college football. It's not a good idea. Now, just through whispers and rumors, it sounded like Kadyn Proctor was not alone, was not the only transfer that has transferred out of the program that has now gotten a little bit of cold feet. I don't think for everybody who's been wondering, everybody who's been insinuating or hoping that Caleb Downs is going to be one of those transfers, I don't think Caleb Downs is one of those transfers. I think he is settled in, locked in at Ohio State, but I do think there are other guys who transferred out of the program, of these 20-25 guys who transferred out of the program, who have gotten cold feet and have wondered about coming back to Tuscaloosa. And we'll see if that manifests itself over the next several weeks. But no matter if it benefits Alabama or hurts Alabama, it's bad for college football to have, look, you transfer once, I think that's A-okay. and you get your immediate eligibility. But now that Kadyn Proctor has gone in the transfer portal twice in the span of 2 cycles, there's got to be some sort of punitive penalty for him. And look, I know that advocating for sitting out for a year would hurt Alabama, and would throw a wrench into his transfer potentially. But I think you have to go back to the old transfer rules, because that's how you're going to slow down some of this chaos. And if Kadyn Proctor knows, I've only got 1 transfer. I'm sitting here in December and January. Nick Saban just retired. We just lost the Rose Bowl. I don't know if I want to use my 1 transfer because I'm going to have to be stuck, basically at Iowa the rest of my career. That's it's a big decision, because if that second transfer comes with a year sitting out, goes with the old transfer portal rules, you're going to have a whole lot less people jumping in immediately. You got what? We addressed it with college basketball earlier in the week. You had 300 guys go in the portal on the first day. You would have fewer athletes jump into the portal if you were more restrictive of that second jump, that second move into the portal, because I think that because of the freedom, I can just go in at any time, and if I'm valuable enough, my old school will take me back. We've seen that many times, without the re-enrollment like Kadyn Proctor did, but Elijah Pritchett jumps in the portal and then jumps right back out, comes back to Alabama. You'd see less guys going into the portal, just testing the waters per se, if you're more restrictive of that second move. So for Alabama, is it a good thing or bad thing? I mean, you decide. My man Wendell Hare says, I'd make it clear to Kadyn Proctor that he has to earn his spot back. And I think that that's probably, you have to with the rest of the team. You can't just give him the 1.1 job back. You can't just say you're the left tackle right away. I mean, will he earn that job? But for week number 1, maybe, probably he could. But you can't look Elijah Pritchett in the face. You can't look the rest of the linemen in the face and say, hey, this guy left for 8 weeks and now he's coming back and he didn't do anything in spring practice, and now here we are. Fall camp gets rolling and he's the first string left tackle. I think that'd be a bad look. So it's going to be interesting to see, just from a team dynamic standpoint, not from how he fits on the field, because I think he's going to fit just fine on the field. I mean, hey, we saw him last year continue to get better slowly but surely, and I think he's going to continue to do that over the next 2 years at least before he goes into the NFL, 2 to 3 years. My man Wendell continuing on, just make it where each athlete is allowed 1 transfer freebie, yes. Then in order to transfer back or somewhere else, they must finish the academic semester. All right, so Wendell, he is going to have to. Well, actually, I'm sure. I don't know. He's going to go into the portal. April 15th is the spring window, is the next spring window. So I would imagine he's going to finish the spring semester, get to the end of April, 1st of May, finish that spring semester at Iowa. Or maybe, he's transferred twice in the same semester. You probably throw this whole semester out academically. That's going to be funny. That's going to be crazy. And that's an aspect that people don't even consider, the academics. They say student athlete. That's an aspect that they don't even consider. How many of his credits did he transfer to Iowa? Did he what did he earn at Iowa this spring? But I do agree with giving them the 1 freebie. I think when you go back for that second transfer, you should have to revert to the old transfer rules where you have to sit out a year. And that would, I think that would create a lot of people taking a little more time with their futures and with their thoughts. So I don't think Caleb Downs, that's the only thing I wanted to make clear. I don't think Caleb Downs is coming back to Alabama. I know a lot of people were rumoring that or hoping that or wondering that over the Twitter sphere over the last couple of days, but I think that's a no-go. Let's get into something else. Let's get into Alabama Pro Day as Abby and Bruce are fighting. I got the blur screen on today so everybody can see them. I will take a sip of my coffee. Hey, Abby. Hello, Abby. All right, so let's talk about Alabama Pro Day. Alabama Pro Day, I went on Wednesday. One more from Wendell Hare. Once these players' grades start slipping due to student athletes transferring, what are people going to say then? I don't even think that people are even understanding or even caring about the academic side of anything anymore, Wendell. I think it's all about what are you doing on the field and how fast you can get to the league. And how fast you can get to the league, some of the guys are getting to the league pretty fast, so like Terrion Arnold, just 2 years on the field, redshirt sophomore. 3 years, obviously, is the requirement, but Alabama having its pro day on Wednesday. It was a lot of fun, but it was a weird event. It was fun to be there because obviously I love to be at the action, but there wasn't a whole lot of access, and I don't want to blame that on the pro day. It just wasn't really like it was a strange event. Okay, so basically it was just a bunch of scouts crowding around the vertical jump and crowding around the bench press and crowding around the end of the 40-yard dash and crowding around the finish line of the agility drills and the 3-cone drills, as they should. And they're taking their own times and they're writing their own measurements. They're all at the end of the broad jump, that sort of thing. And so you're just having to overhear some of these times and some of these measurements. And sometimes you got good, hey, that was a 4.4, that was, the broad jump was pretty easy to hear. Not 9 feet, 6 inches, 11 feet. So that was pretty easy to hear. But you didn't really get any 40 times. It was just kind of an experience to be there and watch them perform. And was it fun? It was great. Yeah, for sure. You saw several NFL coach, a couple NFL coaches, a couple NFL GMs, and scouts from virtually every team were there. Do I make much of pro day? Honestly, no, I don't. I think it's a bunch of hooey as far as, what is it? I mean, Kool-Aid ran a pretty good 40, and he's going to have surgery today. He's having surgery on his foot, the Jones fracture in his foot, which we found out was the bone connecting the pinky, the pinky bone in your foot, the pinky toe. That's what the bone is, the middle bone connecting that to your big foot. Is the Jones fracture. So he competed with the Jones fracture and did relatively well from my naked eye. I mean, I was standing, 10 feet away, 5 feet away from various events, and he was very athletic. But I think that it's just a load of hooey. In my opinion, I think it's more so a maturity test. I think it's a maturity test to say, hey, we're going to draft you in 30 days. Are you staying relatively in shape? Have you lost your, have you put on 10 pounds of fat? Are you sitting around eating Doritos, watching whatever you are, junk food on TV and watching Netflix and HBO? Like, what are you doing with the last couple of weeks? I think really it's more a maturity test than hey, this guy's moving up my draft board and down my draft board, because we've talked about it. I mean, we talked about it with the combine 4 or 5 weeks ago, that you have all the GPS information. I mean, look, Terrion Arnold, when he pulls his shirt off, when he pulls his pants off, and he's standing there in underwear like 15 feet away, does it make me feel bad about my body? Yeah, absolutely, because he looked like a Greek god. And basically you could see everything just sending right on out there. And so it's like, ooh, look at this guy. He's going to be great. And he was great in front of the TV cameras with us one last time. And I'm sure that he was on the NFL Network set. They had a little mini set that they had. And he's going to be great on TV. He's going to be a hugely marketable player. And that's great. But, like, what do you really measure? You saw Antonio Pierce talking to Terrion Arnold. You saw some Packer scouts talking to Kool-Aid McKinstry. You saw Bear scouts looking on. Like, it was just, what did you really get out of it? I mean, you get to know these prospects a little bit more as people. But as far as the performance and the numbers, I don't think they mean that much. I don't think they mean that much at all. I think it is much more a maturity test for these guys as they're 30 days away from their lives changing. Let's talk about recruiting, because I don't want to. There's not much to get into with pro day for me, because I don't think is that deep. Let's talk about recruiting real quick. Look, Kalen DeBoer says, comes into Alabama, and people say, you can't recruit the South. He's not from the South. He doesn't have connections. Husky Harsin, he is not. Oh my Lanta, Alabama getting 2, not 1, but 2 commits this week, both linebackers. You got your man Daryl Duke Johnson out of Eastman, Georgia, Dodge County High School, and you got your guy Abdul Sanders Jr. at a Mater Dei High School. He's a Mater Dei Monarch, and Alabama's had a lot of success with some Mater Dei Monarchs, Mr. Bryce Young being one of them. So you get 2 linebackers this week, 4-star from the composite for Abdul Sanders, and a 4-star for Daryl Johnson. Daryl Johnson considered the 3rd linebacker. Abdul Sanders a good bit lower, 37th overall for the linebackers. But it brings Alabama to what? It brings Alabama to 7 overall recruits, 7 overall commitments in the 2025 class. And how many of them have been in since the DeBoer era? Daryl Johnson, Derek Smith, Antonio Coleman, Zamir Smith, and Abdul Sanders. 5 of the 7. 5 of the 7 have come in since Kalen DeBoer, and you've got the other 2, Miles Johnson and Antonio and Turbo Johnson, Turbo Rogers, excuse me, Anthony Rogers, already staying committed from the previous regime. You've got your classes up to the number 8 overall, and you're sitting here pretty with like a lot of other targets. Obviously, it's early in the class period, but you've got guys from now, a lot of guys in the South have been committing, and now Abdul Sanders committing from California. You're maintaining a little bit of your West Coast roots there from that you built up for the last couple of years at Washington and Fresno State. I think that everybody getting on to Brian Harsin and maybe, Kalen DeBoer and calling him Brian Harsin need to slow it on down, as he has gotten a lot of momentum on the recruiting trail already. That's 5 recruits in the month of March. And so you're still building on this recruiting class. You haven't even gotten to the summer yet. You can't go to in-home visits. All these guys basically coming for official or unofficial visits, mostly unofficial visits here to Tuscaloosa, and then committing to the new staff once they see everything, get to know everybody. So that's really exciting. Alabama moved up to number 8 already in the 2025 class rankings. Obviously, the rankings are not be-all, end-all, but it does give you a little bit of a ballpark of what kind of talent these teams are recruiting. And it's nice to see Kalen DeBoer picking up right where Nick Saban left off. Look, you might say, oh, it's not number 1. Nick Saban, he'd be right in this 8 to 15 to 20 range the last couple of years, this time on the calendar with, 4 to 8, 7, so 7 or so commit. So he's following right in the same pattern. Coach Saban, you've watched him over the last several years close through the summer and build through the summer, basically in that August, September window, get up into that top 2 or 3 class. And we'll see if Kalen DeBoer does that. You got to several months until then. You are already starting off strong, and it's going to be fun to cover it. We're going to try to get some of these 2025 recruits on. We got a lot of the 2024 recruits on. We appreciate them and we wish them well. It's very, very cool for me to see some of the 2024 recruits in Alabama uniforms at practice. I'm hopeful to see some of those guys excel. That would make me happy on a personal level, and I'm hopeful to bring you the 2025 class slowly but surely over the summer. Get to know some of these guys as they commit to Alabama. With that, let's talk about practice. We talk about practice, y'all. Yesterday, we were at the Baltimore facility, and we got to see practice, and that was fun. 25 minutes again out there on the tarmac as music was going again. We had my favorite track yesterday, Hated or Love It, the underdogs on top. So you had that going out. The music was emanating from a different place, it seemed like, and that was fine. Not really a big deal. I'm just noting that. My biggest takeaways from practice yesterday is that they're practicing. My biggest takeaway was Kane Womack. Kane Womack spending a lot of time dealing with Deontay Lawson and dealing with Jihad Campbell right there in the middle. They did a lot of drills throughout the time where we were at throughout the time the media was out there, and it was a lot of teaching. And so it seems like, as Kalen DeBoer met with us after practice, he said, we're still implementing things. We're still installing things. It seemed like that was exactly what Kane Womack was up to, installing his defense with Jihad Campbell and Deontay Lawson. And it was weird. It's weird seeing 0 and 11 in the middle, but we'll get used to it, and that'll be fun. You guys may not know this, but I love number 11. That's my favorite jersey number. So we'll see Jihad Campbell if he can rock that for us, and then it'll be weird to see, but fun to see Deontay Lawson in that number 0. We already hit on the offensive line earlier when we were talking about Kadyn Proctor, but let's go back to it real quick. With the offensive line, the first offensive line was Elijah Pritchett, Tyler Booker, Parker Brailsford, Jaden Roberts, and Miles McVay. A lot of intrigue, in my opinion, with the tackles, not so much on the interior. How will Parker Brailsford kind of adjust to the SEC? Well, I think he's going to have 2 helpers on his right and his left in Tyler Booker and Jaden Roberts, so I'm not really worried about that. And then Elijah Pritchett, he wasn't great. He wasn't horrible. He wasn't great last year when he was working as the left tackle. Obviously, he and Kadyn Proctor going back and forth through the early part of the year. But look, development happens and teaching happens. What we saw yesterday, you're not getting to see a whole lot of like evaluations. It's basically position drills. It's position drill by position drill over and over and over again. You get individual breakout drills. It's not live action by any means. When the offensive lineman is doing a drill, he's going up against another offensive lineman or the pads. Same thing with the defensive line. You're seeing the defensive lineman chop and rip through. Most of the time, he's going up against another defensive lineman. Same thing with these defensive back drills. We're watching a lot of defensive back drills where the defensive back is, covering the 9 route, covering the fade right down the sideline. Well, a lot of the times, he's going up against another defensive back because that's just the way the numbers work and the rotations work. Is that bad? No, but I don't think it's a fair evaluation. So for me to sit here and say, "Oh, Elijah Pritchett, he looked great. Oh, he looked amazing," I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair to say about any of these guys, as it was mostly all technique and fundamental work. So you're still in the early periods of building this Alabama program. You're still in the early periods of installing the offense, installing these are the new drills, these are the new ways we do things, and I think it's going well. The tempo was good. There was only 1 or 2 times where I heard Kane Womack. He dropped a couple F-bombs. I was saying, let's go. And so for everybody who was worried about Kalen DeBoer not cursing, Kane Womack picked up that slack yesterday. It wasn't heavy. It was definitely not heavy by any means, but it was a couple of, salt and pepper. Here's a curse word here. Here's a curse word there. A little salt and pepper seasoning in the dialogue and in the coaching. So for everybody, there was a lot of people maybe sillily worried about, Coach Saban cursed a lot. These players aren't getting cursed at which Kalen DeBoer, they were a little bit yesterday during the time we were out there by Kane Womack. So it was a lot of fun to be out there. I don't think you can take a ton of conclusions from the 20 to 25 minute period that we get to see. I'm not saying that as a, hey, don't let us be there, because thank you so much for letting us be there, Kalen DeBoer and Josh Maxson. We appreciate you guys so much for letting us be there. A lot of fun. My other big takeaways came from the corners, the defensive backfield. Look, we've talked about the defensive backfield a couple of different times already with the spring practice. I'm wondering if Alabama's going to go into the transfer portal in the spring window hunting a corner. You had Jaleel Hurley and Damani Jackson basically leading the guys, but there was a good bit of Jalen Mbakwe, Xavier Brown, and Zay Mincy kind of mixing in there. And did they look the part? Absolutely. They looked the part running through the drills. I mean, they're big enough, they're fast enough, their hips are fluid. They're looking the part, they're catching the football. I mean, they're not getting 100-mile-an-hour fastballs, but they're making the interceptions, and they're jamming the receiver at the line. They look the part basically. But my big concern is you don't have a whole lot of experience at all. Like, Damani Jackson just played 1 season at USC before transferring. Jaleel Hurley redshirted last year. The rest of these guys were in high school. Now, does Jalen Mbakwe, does Xavier Brown, and do Zay Mincy, do they look like college corners? Yes, they do look like college, big, long arms, and kind of imposing, really. And so I think they look the part. I'm worried about the experience at the college level. And so I'm wondering if Alabama is going to go into the transfer portal looking for a cornerback in the spring window. What else did I have from practice? I think that's pretty much it. Look, we saw practice for the 25 minutes. Jalen Milroe went with the ones, went through the line first. It's not with the ones because they never came together as a practice, but went through the line first through the quarterback drills. Jalen Milroe, Ty Simpson, Austin Mack, and then Dylan Lonergan. I think that's going to be pretty much set in stone. It sounds like Jalen Milroe is the guy, and he's not going to be challenged. And I think that's A-okay. No problem. We'll see how he develops in this offense. It sounds like, by all accords, that he's excelling in it so far. Really getting to the facility early to understand it, and excelling so far early in practice. So we'll just have to see how it translates in A-Day. These guys are going to scrimmage or kind of practice more live on Saturday. We're going to be back with you on Saturday, talking with you with BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com. After the Saturday day, we're going to get some time with some defensive players and assistants, players and coaches after the Saturday practice period. So that'll be the 6th practice period for this kind of spring period. And what are we, 3 weeks away? We're 3 weeks away from Alabama A-Day, and we'll have you covered right here at BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com. Speaking of BamaCentral, we want to apologize for you guys. We have been experiencing a little bit of site difficulties over the last 20 hours or so. And that's a little bit of the reason that I was unmotivated to bring you a show. That is no excuse. I apologize. That's on my end. But the site difficulties is not on my end. We are getting that sorted out ASAP. If you are following us at BamaCentral.com and you're seeing like yesterday's headlines, that's why. If you want to see us, you can look at our social medias at BamaCentral on X, at Alabama Crimson Tide on Sports Illustrated on Facebook. We're giving you all the coverage as current as we can right there until we get our technical difficulties worked out. We appreciate everybody reading us right there and bearing with us. We should be back online before the game tonight. We hope to be back online before the game tonight. If not, we are working as fast as we can to get back online and give you the Alabama Crimson Tide coverage that you deserve at BamaCentral.com. Let's keep it going. We're going to go into yesterday at the tournament, Thursday, specifically SEC related, and then we're going to round it out with Alabama and Charleston tonight. All right, so SEC. What the hell? What happened? What happened yesterday? Okay, Mississippi State, you got punked. Michigan State basically beat you up on the defensive end and stymied your offense and kept you from getting to the hoop and basically forced you into a bunch of bad shots. And, Josh Hubbard played well, but the rest of your team really didn't. You lost. SEC 1-3. South Carolina game I didn't see a single second of. What was I doing? Oh, I was at Alabama football practice. That's what I was doing. So South Carolina, sorry, I didn't get to watch you guys lose, but Lamont Parrish, great season. I wasn't really expecting much out of you anyways, as Oregon beat South Carolina. And then what the heck? Kentucky let this man, Jack Golke, hit 10 3-pointers. And thank you, Stingray, for watching, because, yes, Coach Calipari is washed. He's absolutely, not as a recruiter and not as a friend, but he is absolutely washed as a game planner and as an in-game coach. And really, I guess he's washed as a motivator. You go 0-2 in postseason play with one of the most talented teams in Kentucky history, and it's absolutely disgusting. And I know Golke was just like absolutely stupidly on fire, but he wasn't the only player out there for Oakland. You play some defense on them a little bit, and then you're turning the basketball over on the offensive end. I know shooting 30%, that can happen to anybody. It might happen to Alabama tonight, but don't turn the basketball over like you did. It's just absolutely embarrassing. I had Kentucky probably, I think, to my Elite Eight, and they let me down. I didn't expect them to be national champions or to go to the Final Four like a lot of people did, but just awful effort for Kentucky, and the SEC starting off pretty poorly. Everybody cheering him and basically saying the SEC is the number one conference in America this year. You're gonna have to see. You're gonna have to find out with what, 5 more SEC teams in action. What are we at right here? We're in the middle of the day, and oh my gosh, Northwestern and Florida Atlantic are in overtime, but it looks like Northwestern's going to win. They're up by 9. Baylor is beating Colgate by 20. UAB is playing close with San Diego State. What's my first SEC game? Yale and Auburn at 3:15. All right. As much as I'd love to see Auburn lose, I think they're going to win and represent the SEC, get the SEC off on a good start. 3:15, Florida and Colorado. There you go. Here we go. I did take Florida in my bracket. Texas A&M and Nebraska at 5:50, so you get 3 SEC games in a row. I did take Nebraska to beat A&M. I think that I think that A&M's gas has run out. And then we keep on running. What's the next SEC game? Well, it's Alabama. That's the 5th. It's the 4th. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, Alabama is the 5th at 6:35. So we'll see if Alabama can win tonight. Stingray wants me to talk about Sanford and Kansas, but real quick, and we'll do that, and then we'll hit Alabama. All right. Last night, Sanford and Kansas, you got Bucky Bald against a short roster in Kansas. And was it a bad call? Yes, it's a bad call. Am I going to be up in arms about it personally? No, not really. Just because when you are Goliath, or when you're David and you're going up against Goliath, you got to get it all right. And you're going to have bad calls in the NCAA tournament. You're going to have bad calls with officiating. Does that make it right? No, it doesn't. Should the official have called a foul? No, it was all ball. It was a clean play. But when you're trying to take down a blue blood like Kansas, I think it's just my opinion. It's just my opinion that the official is usually going to give the blue blood a little bit of a favorable whistle, and that's what Kansas, that's North Carolina, that's Duke, that's UCLA. When UCLA's in there and they're good, when you're playing against one of the premier programs, UConn will look to a little bit to an extent. You're going to have to play a little bit higher than the standard of the officiating. And so it was a terrible call. Yeah, Stingray, you're exactly right. And you can listen to the Stingray show on Tide 100.9 in Tuscaloosa locally and in several Mississippi locations right there at Tide 100.9. Listen to him at 6 o'clock most weekdays after Ryan Fowler goes off the air if you want to hear his opinions on Sanford and Kansas. I know he's a big Sanford Bulldog, Buckyball, but personally not sad that Sanford goes out. If the other three state of Alabama school teams lose, UAB and UAB and Auburn lose, I won't be that sad if Alabama wins and they're the only state of Alabama school to move on to round number 2. We'll see if that happens. And we'll see tonight at 6:35. Alabama, 9.5-point favorite over the College of Charleston. Oh my gosh, how are you feeling? What's your prediction for the game? You can drop it in the comments. What do you think? Can Alabama move on? Okay, so the last time we saw Alabama, it was wild. You saw the first 4 minutes against Florida of, oh my gosh, this is what it's supposed to look like. It was perfect. The first 4 minutes against Florida were absolutely perfect. It was, oh my gosh, the last 8 weeks of absolute hooey that we've endured are worth it. Look at them figuring it out on the court. Look at them playing good defense. Look at them rebounding the basketball, clearing the defensive glass, and getting out on the run. It was great. The first 4 minutes, you buried Florida into an 11-3 hole or so, and you turned them over. You were up 7-1 on the glass. It was great. It was perfect. And I thought, well, okay, Nate Oates, well, look at you. You've hit the right button at the right time. And then who was it? Todd Golden. Yeah, Todd Golden. He calls timeout. The Florida coach calls timeout, and it all collapses slowly but surely. It didn't collapse, in a matter of seconds. It took Florida till late in the first half to get up 31-32, and then from there it was all Florida. It was a slow and steady collapse from that timeout, and Alabama stopped playing defense. Alabama stopped rebounding the basketball. It was just not a good. It was just everything that we've seen over the last 8 weeks. We'll say that, combined with average shooting. Not a great shooting, but what? Goodness gracious! Thank you guys. Hey! Would y'all calm it down just a little bit? Hey, please. Yeah, everybody, calm it down. Woohoo! Let's take a deep breath. Yeah, thank you. All right, good. Pretty sure Latrell Wrightsell went 0 for 4. And I'm pretty sure Rylan was like 1 for 5. Mark was like 1 for 5. So it was not a good shooting night either. And you let the bad shooting dictate your defense, and boom, Florida blew you out of the building, and you're out of the SEC tournament. Not good. So that's the last time you saw the Crimson Tide. And yeah, Rylan told us after the game that he hadn't practiced all week. And ideally, that's been rectified this week. You got a full week of practice under your belt, fully with the entire team. When was the last time that happened? When was the last time that happened? When Latrell wasn't not practicing and testing his head to see if he was going to come back in the 4 games that he missed. And then when Ryland missed the last game of the season against Arkansas. And then, Ryland missed the next week, the lead-up week to the SEC tournament. When was the last time this team was healthy? Was it against Texas A&M? I think it was. I'm looking at Alabama's schedule. Texas A&M week was how many games ago? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games ago, Alabama beats Texas A&M the first time they wear those throwback uniforms, 100-75. So that's a long time ago. So is the Tide back? And is the Tide ready to make a run after having really 2 full weeks, one game in 2 weeks? This is your second game at the end of the second week. and you're playing an inferior opponent. You know this. You look at the KenPom rankings, as we often do, and Charleston sitting there at 99 overall, and they're sitting there with the 57th best offense and the 174th defense. But they've got some playmakers, and they've got some shot makers, and they've got just enough confidence to beat you. Absolutely. If you don't play, look at exactly what happened with Oakland last night. Should they have been on the floor with Kentucky talent-wise? Absolutely not. Coach Calipari, whatever happens to you, you deserve it at this point. That was one of the most talented teams I've seen Kentucky have in many years, and you wasted it. An inferior team beat them. Charleston can beat you tonight. Charleston, look, everybody's talking about the metrics and everybody's talking about Alabama, a 9.5-point favorite. What happened last year with Charleston? Charleston is a 2-time CAA regular season champion. Now, they also won last year's conference tournament title for their automatic berth. They won this year's conference tournament title for their automatic berth. The last time they played, unlike Alabama, they weren't blown off the floor. They won a conference championship game in overtime. They were fighting off who? They were fighting off one of their Stony Brook. They were fighting off Stony Brook. They won 82-79 in overtime. Now, these are not good teams. The William & Marys, the North Carolina A&Ts, the Drexlers, the Townsends. These are not good teams that they're beating, but they've won 12 games in a row. They've gained confidence. They believe in themselves. It's going to be a challenge tonight for Alabama. And how do you know it's a challenge if those numbers don't prove it to you? The fact that they are fighters. What did they do last year? They made it to the round of 64. They played in a 5-12 game. What are we playing in? Oh, 5-12 game tonight. They were the 12 last year. Who was their 5 seed that they played against? They played San Diego State. Why do we know San Diego State? Oh, my gosh, San Diego State beat Alabama's butt in Louisville and went to the Final Four. They lost to San Diego State in the first round by 6 points. It was a 3-point game with like 30 seconds left. The fouling, you know how it works with the last 30 seconds, kind of shifted the spread into San Diego State's favor. But it was a close game throughout the entire game. Charleston had the lead early in the first half. San Diego State fought back, and then it was basically tied at halftime and tied throughout the entirety of the game, with San Diego State taking an edge, a little bit of an edge over the last 10 minutes and holding on to that tiny edge through the last little bit of the game. It's going to be a battle tonight for Alabama. It's going to be a battle tonight. And look, who are you going up against? You're going up against a guy named Rain Smith. Rain Smith and Ante Berzovic. Okay, Rain Smith averaging, 14 points a game, good little 3-point shooter, guard play, Australian guard for Charleston, junior, and Ante Berzovic, Croatian forward, 6'10", 225. That's basically what you're going to be going up against on the offensive end. And does that make me a little nervous? The guard doesn't, but the forward does. Oh, man, I never hear grades mentioned anymore, buddy. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Talking about going back to an earlier topic. Yep, the academics are all thrown out. You're absolutely right. But you're going to have to go against 2 foreign-born players who have been playing basketball for probably a long time, have belief in themselves, been playing in a small conference. It's a recipe that can come up and bite you. I was on an earlier show today. I am taking Alabama to win tonight. I took Alabama to go to the Sweet 16. I picked Grand Canyon to beat St. Mary's in the next game. That's going to be at 9:05. We're going to have to watch that late. Stay up late, pour your coffee, and we'll see if Alabama can get to the second round and take on the winner of St. Mary's and Grand Canyon. Look, my bracket is busted. I hope that your bracket is not. If it's not, you can chime in the comments and tell us what upset you picked. If you picked Oakland to beat Kentucky, you're a lot smarter than me. And you can tell everybody how smart you are in our comments at Joe Gaither 6. Is that the rest of my notes? That's pretty much my notes. We talked about Kadyn Proctor. I love it from a football standpoint. I kind of hate it from an old man boomer standpoint, transfer portal standpoint. It makes me feel icky. It makes me feel a little bit dirty to see it kind of, go full start. You go in the transfer portal twice in 2 cycles, and you go from one place to another and then back in those cycles. Makes me feel a little icky, in my opinion. So we'll see how Kadyn Proctor comes back to Tuscaloosa in the spring transfer portal window, and how and what Kalen DeBoer decides how he decides to reintegrate him to the team. We talked about Pro Day, how, it was a fun event, but I don't really think it's worth that much for draft stock. We'll see how the 10, 12 guys who participated, if they can get drafted, and how they'll do. We talked about Alabama getting 2 new recruits, 2 linebackers, Duke Johnson and Abdul Sanders. Coach Kalen DeBoer up to the number 8 overall recruiting class for the class of 2025 cycle with 7 commits, 7 total commits, 5 in the last month. We talked a little bit about Alabama football practice, a little bit about the offensive line, a little bit about Caden Womack, a little bit about the defensive backfield as well. And then we basically talked about the SEC's disappointing start. We're going to see if the SEC can go 5-0 today. Alabama, Auburn, Florida, Texas A&M. And it's 4-0 because we had the 5th team play last night in Tennessee. Tennessee did win to get to the SEC's first win. And then we talked about Alabama's matchup tonight with College of Charleston. I'm predicting, what did I say earlier on the show that I was on? I think I said 93-88. 93-88, Alabama wins. You can drop your score prediction in the comments. Let everybody know what you think. Will Alabama get upset tonight? Oh my gosh. Look, the social media went crazy last night when Kentucky lost. It will go even nuts. It will go even crazier tonight if Alabama loses to the College of Charleston. We'll see what happens tonight on BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com. We got our man Blake Byler. He's out in Spokane, Washington. You can follow him on social media at Blake Byler45 for his coverage. Katie Wyndham is doing softball tonight. Alabama is getting back in action inside the Joe, so you can follow her at Katie Wyndham _. And I'm just going to be sitting in the house watching basketball, so you can follow me at Joe Gaither6 if you want to follow all of our coverage. That's going to do it for our show. We'll keep up with the tournament right here on the Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com.
Thanks for joining us on today's edition of the Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central. Keep up with Joe on all his social media pages at Joe Gaither6. Subscribe, rate, and review the show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and be sure to read us daily at BamaCentral.com.